It was almost the perfect crime. Scandalous affairs, a life insurance payout, a dead wife, and a staged crime scene. This is what I'm going to be investigating on today's episode of Katie Investigates. In October of 1991, a student nurse named Julie Green was murdered by her husband, solicitor Warren Green, in Wigan. At the time, Warren feigned innocence, and he played the grieving husband, the ignorant husband. He claimed that he had no clue what was going on. He played that to a T, even surprising the likes of Julie's family. They didn't believe that he was even capable of doing any harm to her whatsoever. Julie's body was found by her husband, very conveniently I might say, in the storeroom, which was behind a locked door, with only 2 keys that could actually open the door. One had been misplaced by Warren himself, and the other belonged to the next door neighbour, Joe McGuire, who swore that he had nothing to do with it. When 2 detective superintendents entered into the scene, they could tell that something just wasn't right. There was Julie lying in a pool of her own blood with a bottle of pills in her hand. Warren would later attest that Julie had a drug problem and she must have been murdered in a drug deal gone wrong. However, when the autopsy came through, it actually revealed that she had been struck 15 times over the head. However, more and more evidence soon began to pile up. They had found Warren's shoes, which had blood on the bottom of it, and when sent off for analysis, they later revealed that it was actually Julie's blood. At this point, they still couldn't find the keys. It took them 3 searches of the house itself to actually find the keys, which were hidden underneath the floorboards and in a drain pipe. Once the keys were revealed, everything sort of just unraveled. It would take about 2 years before he actually appeared in court, and when he took the stand, he still pled innocent. He cast off most of the evidence as circumstantial. It was the keys and the shoes, and the fact that he was set to make £80,000 from life insurance from her murder, that all added up to a guilty charge and life in prison. This case is actually really difficult to talk about. It's really close to home to my family and my mum, who knew Julie. I'm going to switch to another camera and do some investigating into this crime before I bring my mum in. Welcome to my other camera. So before I bring my mum in, I really want to do a little bit of investigating on my own, and I've found that when Googling online this case, so much pops up, but there is an underlying theme between all of the articles, and I found out that it was actually written by one person, the same person, who also did a podcast as well. And I've noticed that he actually writes for Reader's Digest, so I think I'm going to contact Reader's Digest and see what I can find. So after ringing Reader's Digest, it turns out that they did not have his information to give to me, but they did give me a couple of email addresses, which I'm going to email now. Dear Reader's Digest, I'm currently a student at York St John University studying film and television production. I'm currently making a documentary, the topic of which is covered in at least 2 of your articles, which I've included right here. Both of these have been written by David Muller, whom I would like to contact in order to discuss the case further. I would much appreciate it if you could pass on his contact details to me. Many thanks, Katie. Hi, this is Katie from the future checking in. I just wanted to say that Reader's Digest did not get back to me within the time frame that I needed, so I just ended up having a sit-down chat with my mum instead. So, hi Mama.
Hello, Katie.
Take me back to 1991. What were you up to? What were you doing?
1991 was my 2nd year as a student nurse. That was the year where we were going to do a set of nights.
Is that how you met Julie? Or how you interacted with Julie?
Yes, I interacted with her. Yeah, that's how I interacted with her most, except when we were in college together.
On the night that she was murdered, how did that work?
It was a bit strange, to be honest. I didn't actually see her, which was unusual. I used to see her first thing in the morning because she'd be with the night staff. And as part of your training, you had to hand over your patients to the day team, and as I was part of the day team, she would hand over to me. And that morning, for some weird reason, they'd let her go early, so I didn't see her at all that morning.
So when did you know that she was missing?
I knew she was missing that morning because Warren rang the ward and spoke to the sister, and I overheard that conversation, and he was worried that she hadn't come home. And then later that afternoon, somebody on the ward said Do you know Julie is dead?
When did that escalate to you knowing that she was murdered?
That was much later on, probably early evening, sort of around about 3 o'clock. The higher ups came to the ward and took me into the office on my own and said Julie had been murdered. From that point onwards, there was a media frenzy outside the hospital, and the higher ups told us not to interact with them at all.
Yeah, but you never talked to them at all?
Never talked to them.
Never talked to the police?
No, no one.
So all of the reporters, they were hanging outside of the hospital, outside of the ward. It was Gidlow ward. Does that place even still exist?
It still exists.
Well, I mean, if it still exists, then would you want to go back? Would you want to visit?
I'd love to visit it.
Let's go. So I ended up taking my mum down to Wigan, which was actually so nice because I grew up in Bolton, so it was really nice to come back home. But that being said, we ended up visiting the Royal Albert Infirmary, and it just so happens that my mum revealed to me that the place was actually haunted. And it was haunted before the murder, but my mum was eyewitness to a lot of the stuff that happened, and there was a spike in activity after the murder of Julie. So I'll be very interested to know what she has to say. So I'm going to catch up with her now. So the place was haunted famously to the staff. And had you witnessed anything before Julie's murder?
Actually no, because I was on days and Julie was on nights, and it's specifically at night that the haunting happened.
So did you hear anything then? On your night shifts, did you hear anything at all on the activity?
I did. I was on a night shift and I was sat by myself at the desk on a very long ward, and I heard somebody coming down the corridor behind me, and those footsteps stopped directly behind me. I turned round, nobody there. I looked if any patients were up and about. Everybody was asleep.
After Julie's murder, did that accelerate any of the activity?
It did, but not that particular activity. For example, we went into the kitchen to make the patients cocoa, and every single cupboard door was open, and we knew we'd left the kitchen tidy, the cupboard doors shut, and that was really, really strange.
After Julie's murder, was there anything that was specific to Julie that happened, any activity?
I was sat by a lady who was very, very sick. She suddenly sat up in bed and she said, there's a girl at the end of the bed. She's all in white, she's got long hair way past her waist, and she's looking at you, and she said she wants to tell you something. She's talking, she wants to tell you something. And then this lady just became vague and lay down, and she died soon afterwards. And that was the description of Julie.
All that being said, with all the haunting, do you think that Julie is at peace now? Do you think that she got the justice that she deserved? Because Warren got released about 14 years into his life sentence. He's outliving his life now, free. Do you think that Julie's at peace?
Absolutely not, no. Julie was a very independent and very, she believed in justice and people's rights, and she would be absolutely horrified that he is free after 14 years and her life was ended by him, and that is awful.
Yeah. Thank you guys for joining me on this journey, and I want to say a huge thank you to my mum for telling me this story, because I know that it must be difficult to talk about a friend being murdered and the horrible things that happened afterwards, all of the haunting. Please join me next week for a new episode of Katie Investigates. Bye.